All right, so it doesn't matter whether you're talking about duodenum, jejunum, ileum, the parts of the small intestine. They all kind of look like this plica, which is a folding of the submucosa. So on this picture, look at this line here. That is the Muscularis Mucosa. Okay. Look at these little here. What do you think those are on my list here? Those are the villi, a folding of the mucosa. You can't see microvilli on this picture. So I'm going to erase this and then draw that. So let's draw the MM, Muscularis Mucosa, first. I'm just going to draw this one. Muscularis Mucosa. So let's draw the mucosa over it. It's folded. So these are little individual villi. It'll be the epithelium. Deep to that, you would have connective tissue, lamina propria. Lamina propria, right? So you got the villi. I keep saying villa instead of villi, I apologize. Boom. All right, so these layers here, the black, the blue, the red, you know, the epithelium, the lamina propria, the muscularis mucosa, that's all mucosa, okay? The villi is what you got. And so deep to the MM, the muscularis mucosa would be the connective tissue of submucosa. So here's a different color. Connective tissue, so it goes all up in here, right? So what I'm drawing in green is connective tissue of submucosa. That's why this whole thing, this fold, is a plica. And it's a folding of the submucosa. Okay, it goes to that depth. So that's what you see there. Plica versus villi. You have to go microscopic to see the folding of the cell membrane, and it presents as a brush border. If you look at the individual cells of a villi, the arrangement of the mucosa, you got like these villi pit arrangement. So I'll erase this. Let's see here. Villi, pit, villi, pit, villi, pit. The villi stick up, villus, singular. The pit are called the intestinal crypts. The fancy name is the crypts of Lieberkuhn, and they have Paneth cells, also known as AKA crypts of Lieber, I think that's a UH. Libra-coon with panned cells. The panned cells, these cells are eosinophilic, so they always stain red on histology. The secretions help absorption. They're always found in the base of the pit. So I'll draw like little red cells here. So make the connection. Panned cells are red. They're at the base of these crypts of Libra-coon things. So don't confuse the crypts with the things that stick up, which are the villi. And know that I always like to tag, intestinal capillaries and lacteals within a villi. Lacteal absorbs the fat. Intestinal capillary, red, changes the blue because you have the gas exchange. So intestinal capillaries in red and blue. And the lacteal is a lymphatic structure. They're within a villi, as you can see here. Now the villi are lined with a simple columnar epithelium that presents a brush border. Okay, and that's the last folding. You fold the cell membrane for the absorptive surface. So the villus is lined with an epithelium with a simple columnar ET. That's your microvilli brush border. Now that brush border has enzymes that help facilitate chemical digestion if there's any chemical digestion that needs happening. Expect enzymes in that brush border. So I'll just draw a few orange studs to symbolize enzymes that may be studded within the microvilli brush border. I think I have a picture of that coming up right here. If things flow along the small intestine, polymers that aren't fully digested, for example, here they got starch, you have all these enzymes that can further digest them, right? So by the time they get to this other side, they're monomers. Polymers, monomers, easier to absorb. Okay, so that's the idea for brush border enzymes. Just think of them as finishing off the chemical digestion, because you've accomplished most of it at the duodenum with all those digestive juices being collected at the duodenum. So that model of the small intestine is shown here. You can study the structures. Here's labels on, labels off. And I think it's good to look at the basic GI tract structure first, starting with, from here to here, call it mucosa. So what do you call it from here to here? Submucosa. These two layers are muscularis externa. You have a circular layer and a longitudinal layer. Hard to see down there, but serosa. Okay. Identify. Intestinal crypt. Crypts of Libra-coon with panned cells. See the little red cells at the base? Identify cell, panned cells. Right above this layer here, this is the Muscularis Mucosa. This is malt. They call it lymph nodule. I didn't make these labels. I don't like muscle layer. It's Muscularis Mucosa. Okay. Well, anyways, this was on, I might ask you that, what is this? They say gland, but that's not specific enough. Bruners. Call it Bruners. Well, anyways, this labels on, labels off is kind of the same as this picture I showed you before. So you can go back and review that if you want. But I'm going to move on from small intestine to large intestine, or colon. Here's a picture of it isolated out of the body cavity. You end the small intestine right here. The endobilium is right here. Boom. So this area is kind of important. There's a lot of stuff going on. You got the cecum, you got the vermiform appendix. Let me turn the lights on. So I'm going to draw this part right here. This pouch is called the cecum. Huge. Here's the ileum. It's the end of ileum, the end of that 20-foot long intestine. Ends right here. It's going to dump into, it's called, they look like lips right there. It's called the Ileocecal Valve. Because basically this whole part is called the cecum. It's the first part of the large intestine. There's a little bit of lymphoid tissue that dangles off there. It's the vermiform appendix. An appendix is something you attach it to. It's attached to the cecum. The vermiform describes its shape. It means worm-like. This is the appendix that needs to be removed. Look at the anatomy here. It's receiving all the food stuff. You've accomplished absorption. All the stuff you receive here is like a sludge. Okay? And if fecal matter clogs this area, you strangulate the blood vessels here, and it starts to like enlarge, and it causes you pain. And that's why you have to remove it, because if it bursts, a burst appendix, you don't want fecal matter in the peritoneum, which is supposed to be sterile. So you can die from that. So that's why it's an emergency surgery. You got to remove it. So ileocecal valve, vermiform appendix, ileum, look for this, okay? It's the end of the small intestine, beginning of the colon. The names of the colon are described as the direction of food stuff flowing through it. By the time you get to the colon or large intestine, there's nothing much left to absorb. You mostly absorb water and maybe some fat-soluble vitamins. When you absorb the water, you compact the feces. You also absorb, like I said, fat-soluble vitamins. The small intestine was about 20 feet long, an inch in diameter. The large intestine is about 5 feet long, 3 inches in diameter, okay, in total. 5 feet long, 3 inches diameter. The jejunum ileum, or intra. This first part of the large intestine is called the ascending colon, and it's for the most part retroperitoneal. Okay. So I'm going to erase this. Ascending colon, retro. See what I have on the slide there? It's, so many centimeters. It ascends retroperitoneal. One thing to note about the cecum, well, it's kind of way here, but when you go from the cecum, as you proceed up, the longitudinal muscle layer of muscularis externa narrows into 3 bands called tinea coli. The structure here means ribbon shape. It's like longitudinal, you can see it here. So look for, along the whole length of the colon, longitudinal layer of muscularis externa narrows into 3 ribbon-like structures called tinea coli. Tricky spelling. Whoa. T-A-E-N-I-A-E. If you misspell that one, I'll usually let it go if you ever had to spell it. Yeah, ways. Think of a drawstring in your sweatpants. When you cinch it tight, it kind of creates like little wrinkles in the waistband. That's what you got here. That's why the colon has this pocketed appearance. You got all these little drawstrings called the tinea coli. When they contract, I think they make this, it's not a smooth tube, is it? It's all pocketed. The pockets have names. They're called haustra. Tinea coli create little pockets, quote unquote, called haustra. The singular form of haustra is haustrum. All right, so the first part is the ascending colon. It ends when it bends at this flexure on the right side. So you can simply call this bend the right colic flexure, or sometimes it's called the hepatic flexure because it's right by the liver. So ascending colon ends at hepatic flexure. If you want, go ahead and call it right colic flexure. Either term is acceptable. But then you make that turn, then you go across in the transverse plane. So this next part that kind of loops down like a hammock, the stomach is right on top of it, by the way. The transverse colon, 45 centimeters. It's the longest part of the large intestine. Yeah, a lot of times you get kind of cramps. It's either your stomach or your transverse colon, okay, if it's in that stomach area, because the stomach's right on top of it. Transverse colon. So in our pattern of intra-retro, what is the transverse colon? Intra or retro? Intra is correct. Intraperitoneal. It's in the body cavity. You remove ab wall, you see it. Okay, well, the details are there. Basically, it runs from the right colic flexure to the left colic flexure on the other side. Once again, it runs from the right colic flexure to the left colic flexure on the other side. And all along you have haustra, and there's a tinea coli right there. They cut away on the greater omentum there. And attached there is the transverse mesocolon. Okay, you have to know those two. So the transverse colon attaches to greater omentum, as well as transverse mesocolon, which will anchor it to the back body wall. I'll say it runs from hepatic flexure to splenic flexure. And know that it's not always this neat. You open up a body cavity and it's like, sometimes you open up body cavities and things are all messed up. So what the heck happened in here? It's not all nice and neat like you might see on a model. I had a friend who had her appendix removed. She's like, it took him 2 hours to find my appendix. Like, what, 2 hours? I probably could have found it sooner. Well, you get weird cases and it's like, things get all weird and messed up there. So understand you're looking at an ideal picture. Okay. All right, the other thing is that when you get to this flexure on the way down, you simply call it descending colon. So I wrote hepatic flexure and splenic flexure. The other name for splenic flexure is left colon flexure. Because let's remember, liver on the right, spleen on the left. Descending colon is next. So in our pattern, is this going to be intra or retro? Retro. Basically retro from here on out. It's going to go down here. Then it's going to start to take an S shape. It's called the sigmoid colon from that point on, where it starts to curve. Starts to curve here. At this point, call it sigmoid colon, the last 40 centimeters, because it represents a sigma shape. Now the sigmoid colon is going to be continuous with rectum anus. Now, there's some detail here. At this point, after the sigmoid colon, when you get to rectum anus, the Tenei coli restore the full layer of the longitudinal layer, so that it kind of disappears here, and it kind of goes. You're getting the full layer of the longitudinal muscle layer there by the time you get to the rectum. No more Tenei coli. So by the time we get to rectum anus, I'll say longitudinal layer fully restored. There's a blank picture you can study. Let's look at some other pictures of the anatomy. In a full view here of the torso. I'll start with the simple stuff. Identify organ. Liver, stomach. What do you think this is? Greater omentum. Very good. Which part of the colon is this one? Transverse colon. What's this structure, like a ribbon right there? Tenei coli. There's like 3 of them around there. That's one of them. Anyways, that's small intestine there. That's all you can see from that. There's a different picture of the same thing. I would say 526 is pointing to what? Tenei coli. Okay. Which flexure is this? The one on the right. Right colon flexure or hepatic flexure. What's 491? Duodenum, pancreas, main pancreatic duct. Okay. Yeah, this is transverse colon. Let's see here. Okay, well, let's get to the end here. The rectum is the last 12 to 15 centimeters, it's the fixed terminal part. It's basically following the curvature of the sacrum when you get to the rectum anus. You can't see it here, but it does do that. Follows curvature of the sacrum. You're in the pelvis. In the sectional view here, you can see there's an internal anal sphincter and an external anal sphincter. The external one, remember, I said this before, you can control it with, it's voluntary muscle, so it helps you hold it in. The rectum is a holding chamber for the feces. Anything that was not absorbed, that could not be digested, is contained in the feces. Things like fiber or other things that are not digested. So, yeah, now I want to kind of shift gears. We got to the end, literally, of the digestive tract. I want to talk about the blood supply. I talked about the celiac trunk, but I want to finish talking about the superior and the inferior mesenteric artery. Before I do, is there any questions on the small or large intestine? Okay. Here's a picture of the blood supply to most of the small intestines. It's the superior mesenteric artery. The one thing I kept harping on before the break is it goes over the duodenum. Can you see that? It goes over the duodenum, right around there. Now look at all these little branches coming off. Okay, basically it's jejunum. So this artery will supply blood to jejunum, ileum, and most of the colon up to left colic flexure, splenic flexure. The inferior mesenteric artery gets the rest. Basically call it distal colon, from splenic flexure on down. Distal colon. Basically everything from splenic flexure. The inferior mesenteric, it always kind of goes off to the left. The superior usually goes off to the right. Here's right, here's left, as it comes off the abdominal aorta. Let's get some more pictures. A picture from the book and then from the model. The superior mesenteric artery is this one right here. It kind of goes off to the right a little bit, and as it does, it gives off all these little branches that go to jejunum and ileum. On the model, well, sorry, let me finish here. And you can see some branches cover all the colon up to the splenic flexure. On this model here, here's superior mesenteric, gives off all these little branches that are going to go off to the jejunum ileum. And these branches here supplies blood to the colon all the way up to here, the left colic flexure. So what I did was I took this model and I looked at the back of it. This is what you see. All these little branches of superior mesenteric artery and vein, for that matter. Okay. So this is the back of that. So what you see here is the intestine right there. The end of the duodenum, beginning of jejunum. So here is superior mesenteric artery again. The inferior mesenteric artery is shown here on both of these atlas pictures. It's the one close to the aortic bifurcation down there. It always goes off to the left, as shown better in this picture. It goes off to the left, and well, the way you identify it is it close to that? And then, oh yeah, it's the inferior one. And then look at the branches. If it supplies blood to the distal colon, you know it's the inferior one. Okay, so don't confuse those two. And when you can clearly see them both, well, obviously by the names you can tell what's what. That's superior to that, so that's the superior one. This picture shows how they supply blood to the colon differently. The superior mesenteric artery goes off to the right, and it supplies blood to the colon all the way up to the splenic flexure. The inferior mesenteric artery goes off to the left and supplies blood to distal colon. So here I'm pointing to them again, the superior and the inferior mesenteric arteries. So that's the arterial supply. I want to talk about the venous drainage to the liver. It's called, I'm sorry, I should talk about this one. I'm going too fast. We talk about this model, SMA-IMA. Here, how you can tell, if I'm not labeling it, is if it's the one that's going over duodenum, which one is it? It's the superior one, right? And if it's not, and look at the branches go, it's the inferior one. Okay. So there's both models in the room. All right, let me talk about the venous drainage. We call it first pass because all of the veins first pass to the liver before you go to the vena cava. Most of the GI tract drains to the portal vein. So the term first pass refers to portal blood first passing through the liver before it's delivered back to systemic circulation. Refers to portal blood first passing through liver before returning to systemic circulation. So this picture kind of shows you all the structures that go to the liver. Notice in this picture, there's no vena cava. It's not there. It first passes through the liver. So all the small intestines and the large intestines all drain back to, all those intestinal capillaries drain back to superior or inferior mesenteric veins. The spleen also first passes through the liver. And they all merge up here through portal vein. Okay. I put a bunch of pictures in here. This one, I think the picture that kind of shows the essential of the veins I want you to know, shown here. So let me quickly sketch out what I want you to see there. You got all the veins draining back to superior mesenteric vein, inferior mesenteric vein. Superior mesenteric vein, that one. This one, inferior mesenteric vein. Now the inferior mesenteric vein is going to merge with splenic vein right there. And then both of those will merge with superior mesenteric vein into portal vein. Splenic vein, those two merge with the superior mesenteric vein to form portal vein, which goes to liver. So that's the drainage I want you to know to that. All the blood goes to the liver before you go to the inferior vena cava. So, remember, the liver has a single venous drainage system. So you got hepatic veins draining into inferior vena cava. I'll draw one hepatic vein there. Students always confuse the veins. Don't confuse hepatic vein with portal vein. Portal vein is delivering blood to the liver, but hepatic veins drain the blood, so their functions are opposite. Let's remember what a portal system is. I defined it at the beginning of the course. A portal system, you go capillary, vein, capillary. So this portal vein is the vein between the two capillary beds, right? All right, so portal vein, not to be confused with hepatic vein, which go right into the inferior vena cava. So that's kind of a mistake that's made a lot by students. So let's hope you don't make it. All right, well, I want to teach the histology now. I don't want to use the slides that are here. I want to use the slides that I posted on Canvas. Let me open those up. And this will help you get ready for the digestion histology quiz that's going to become ready today.